Isn't it true that you want to fly commercial so that you can fly in luxury? How much money did you pay for Tyler Perry's Gulfstream jet, for example?
Well, for example, that's really none of your business.
When spiritual authority becomes a business model and sanctuary becomes a shopping mall, the gap between what's preached and what's practiced can shatter millions of lives. In the modern era of faith, a troubling pattern has emerged. Religious leaders rise to prominence by promising divine connection and eternal salvation. They gather devoted followers who give time, money, and absolute trust. But behind closed doors, behind polished facades, a darker reality sometimes unfolds. Today we're examining 10 religious figures whose empires crumbled when the truth finally emerged. Their stories share a common thread: charisma and control, wealth and secrecy, public virtue and private corruption. Each scandal reveals how far someone will go when they place themselves above accountability. Let's begin. Number 10. Paul Crouch. He didn't begin with aircraft, palatial estates, or broadcast dominion. Like many ambitious leaders, he started with a vision and a partner. Together with his spouse, he constructed a broadcasting operation designed to distribute Christian messaging nationwide. What started as a single television outlet eventually metastasized into a global media colossus. Millions of viewers tuned in regularly. Financial contributions accelerated year after year. The organization expanded, accumulated property, and amplified its influence across continents. Yet as the enterprise grew, so did scrutiny. Where exactly was all that money flowing? Observers noticed the leadership family lived in striking comfort. Estates in exclusive neighborhoods, international travel, personal luxuries, all distinctly incongruent with the humble messaging broadcast from the studio. Donors gave believing their contributions funded salvation work. Instead, many financed personal kingdoms. Employees and relatives began asking uncomfortable questions about financial management and ethical boundaries. Some alleged that charitable reserves had been redirected for questionable purposes. The organization denied these charges forcefully. Still, skepticism took root. Years passed. Controversies swelled and receded. The founder maintained control until death, leaving behind a complicated legacy. Some venerate him as a media pioneer. Others see a cautionary tale about unchecked authority and hollow transparency. Number 9. Eddie Long. Outside Atlanta rose one of America's most powerful spiritual institutions. Its pastor commanded thousands of worshipers each week and became one of the country's most recognizable evangelical personalities. His sermons crackled with intensity. His network extended far beyond sanctuary walls. He wore tailored clothing, drove luxury vehicles, and moved seamlessly among politicians and celebrities. To admirers, he embodied success, discipline, and spiritual mastery. Then, in 2010, everything fractured. 4 young men filed civil actions against him. They claimed he had manipulated his position to cultivate inappropriate relationships when they were minors. Special attention, expensive gifts, exclusive travel, these became instruments, they alleged, to create scenarios that violated fundamental boundaries. The accusations ignited national media attention and placed him under intense public pressure. Power without accountability becomes predatory. His response deepened the damage. He denied wrongdoing, but deflected when pressed on specific allegations. The litigation continued privately for years. A settlement was reached, but details were sealed from public view. The congregation shrank. Public confidence evaporated. The pristine image he had cultivated for decades deteriorated beyond repair. For observers, his descent illustrated a timeless principle. When authority goes unchecked, the vulnerable suffer most. Number 8. Peter Popoff. Revival meetings packed massive venues. During these services, he would identify individuals from the audience and reveal stunning personal details, names, addresses, medical conditions, intimate family struggles. He announced this information as supernatural knowledge, direct revelation from the divine. Attendees wept. Believers celebrated. Donations multiplied as people became convinced they were witnessing authentic miracles. The deception unraveled in the mid-1980s when a celebrated magician and skeptic became curious. Using radio frequency detection at one of his crusades, the investigator intercepted hidden transmissions being sent through a concealed earpiece. The voice belonged to his wife, speaking from backstage. She was reading personal data harvested from prayer cards attendees had completed before the service. The recordings were later broadcast nationally. The scandal demolished his credibility. Many predicted his ministry would vanish forever. They were wrong. Years later, he returned to television with an altered strategy. Rather than live supernatural demonstrations, he marketed physical products, blessed water, specially prepared oils, sacred tokens, each promising financial acceleration and physical restoration. Astonishingly, a new generation of viewers embraced his repackaged ministry. He proved that even after devastating exposure, hope and belief remain extraordinarily profitable commodities. Number 7. Jim Bakker. He and his wife constructed one of religious broadcasting's most expansive empires. Their network reached millions of households. But television was merely one component. They developed a sprawling Christian vacation destination featuring accommodation, entertainment, and spiritual programming. At its height, it ranked among America's most visited attractions. Supporters saw this as evidence that authentic faith could manifest as physical prosperity and cultural influence. Donations poured in perpetually, fueling rapid expansion and increasingly lavish amenities. The facade began deteriorating in the late 1980s. Investigations revealed that hush payments had been distributed to silence a former staff member. Federal prosecutors alleged he had systematically deceived supporters about how their contributions were being deployed. Thousands of donors had purchased lifetime membership contracts with promised benefits the organization could never realistically deliver. Prosecutors contended that operational funds were being diverted toward personal comfort and unnecessary expenditures rather than genuine ministry activities. The scandal became one of America's most infamous religious crises. He faced multiple fraud and conspiracy convictions, received an extended prison sentence, but ultimately served a reduced term. His enterprise collapsed spectacularly. The broadcast network dissolved. The resort deteriorated rapidly. Most assumed his public presence had ended permanently. Remarkably, after his release, he gradually returned to religious broadcasting, though he never reclaimed his previous dominion. He acquired a different audience through rebranding and persistence. Number 6. Jimmy Swaggart. During the 1980s, few evangelical voices carried more authority. His passionate sermons, theatrical delivery, and commanding television presence built an enormous international audience. Weekly broadcasts attracted millions. Supporters regarded him as an unflinching defender of moral principles and cultural righteousness. He repeatedly condemned peers for ethical failures. He warned audiences about corruption and human weakness. To his followers, he represented unwavering spiritual leadership in a morally deteriorating world. His collapse, when it came, shocked everyone. In 1988, investigators exposed behavior that completely contradicted the moral standards he had preached for decades. The revelations included substance misuse and inappropriate encounters. Suddenly, the man who had spent years denouncing moral compromise became the subject of international scandal. The contradiction between his public teaching and private actions proved devastating. Television networks broadcast his anguished public confession repeatedly. The moment became television history, part genuine remorse, part desperate rehabilitation attempt. Supporters fractured over whether he deserved forgiveness. Critics pointed to this as proof that religious authority frequently masks hidden corruption. While the scandal severely wounded his reputation, he continued broadcasting and preaching. Yet his legacy permanently transformed. He became less a spiritual authority and more a symbol of religious hypocrisy itself. Number 5. Creflo Dollar. His theological system centered on a seductive promise. Financial success is a divine blessing and an accessible reward. Rather than emphasizing sacrifice or spiritual discipline, he taught that believers could unlock material abundance through faith and generous giving. His sermons celebrated prosperity, wealth accumulation, and the principle that generosity produces exponential financial returns. His ministry expanded internationally. Television broadcasts reached viewers worldwide. He became the movement's most visible spokesperson. Then, scrutiny arrived. Critics questioned whether the luxurious living his messages promoted aligned with what ordinary supporters could realistically achieve. A Senate investigation scrutinized several prominent televangelist organizations, examining their financial practices. He faced intense questioning about wealth accumulation, luxury acquisition, and financial transparency. Teaching others to build wealth while concealing your own acquisition creates credibility collapse. Though the legislative inquiry produced no criminal charges, it ignited fierce public debate regarding whether such ministries operated more like corporations than religious institutions. The controversy never fully dissolved. Even now, his name remains associated with debates about religious commercialization and the exploitation of economically vulnerable believers. Number 4. Kenneth Copeland. He rose to prominence teaching that spiritual faith and material wealth were fundamentally interconnected. Believers who trusted completely and gave generously could expect prosperity to materialize. This message attracted devoted audiences and built an international ministry operation. He accumulated massive personal wealth, operated global broadcasting infrastructure, commanded enormous facilities, and displayed a lifestyle reflecting extraordinary financial success. To admirers, his abundance validated his teachings. To detractors, he personified religion weaponized for accumulation. Controversy centered particularly on his collection of private aircraft. While most religious leaders avoided discussing personal assets, he defended them openly. Private jets, he argued, were essential operational tools enabling efficient ministry travel and global outreach. Critics remained unconvinced. They questioned whether such extraordinary expenses truly served religious purposes, especially when supporters struggled financially while continuing to contribute. The contradiction between his message that giving produces abundance and his supporters' actual economic circumstances highlighted a troubling inconsistency. His refusal to apologize or reconsider fueled accusations that he had exploited vulnerable believers for personal enrichment. Number 3. Carl Lentz. He defied traditional pastoral stereotypes. Designer wardrobes, visible tattoos, conversational tone, effortless access to entertainment industry personalities, he moved through celebrity culture with practiced ease. Leading a trendy Manhattan congregation, he became one of his generation's most recognizable religious personalities. His services attracted younger audiences seeking modern spiritual expression. Programming felt contemporary, enthusiastically produced, and deliberately calibrated for contemporary sensibilities. Through social platforms and celebrity friendships, he transformed his church into a cultural phenomenon, reaching far beyond traditional religious circles. His ascent depended heavily on personal brand management. Unlike predecessors who minimized fame, he embraced it enthusiastically. High-profile relationships with actors and athletes generated substantial publicity, amplifying both his church and personal prominence. Media outlets labeled him pastor to the celebrities. Magazine features and online discussions elevated him beyond conventional religious leadership into celebrity territory. Supporters appreciated his fresh approach to faith. Critics worried the ministry had prioritized image building and influence, seeking over authentic spiritual direction. The skepticism intensified when personal conduct raised uncomfortable questions about his integrity. His carefully constructed image began fragmenting when allegations emerged regarding infidelity and deception. The revelation that his public persona and private behavior diverged dramatically undermined his credibility among followers. The church that had built its identity around his personality faced an identity crisis when that personality proved unreliable. Number 2. Benny Hinn. He became the world's most famous faith healer through massive stadium events, attracting enormous crowds. His crusades featured dramatic moments, people collapsing, emotional outbursts, proclaimed instantaneous healings from serious ailments. International television broadcasts shared these moments globally, expanding his influence to millions. Believers traveled from distant locations hoping to witness miraculous recovery from chronic conditions. To supporters, he possessed extraordinary spiritual power. To skeptics, the performances resembled theatrical productions. As his popularity expanded, skepticism grew simultaneously. Journalists and medical professionals began investigating his healing claims. Multiple investigations questioned whether publicized recoveries could be independently verified. Some individuals who had testified to dramatic healings later reported continued health problems. Former organization insiders raised concerns about testimony selection and presentation manipulation. He denied all accusations and defended his ministry vigorously. The questions never fully disappeared. They followed him throughout decades of ministry. Today, he remains profoundly divisive. Some view him as a beacon of supernatural hope. Others see him as televangelism's most consequential fraud. His legacy illustrates how difficult it becomes to distinguish between genuine faith experience and skilled performance when enormous financial incentives reward deception. Number 1. Ted Haggard. He became arguably the most influential evangelical voice in contemporary American Christianity. Founding a megachurch in Colorado Springs, he built a congregation numbering thousands. His influence extended beyond sanctuary walls into national politics and cultural conversations. He advised presidents. He appeared regularly in national media. He became president of a major evangelical organization, commanding influence over millions of believers nationwide. When spiritual authority influences political power, accountability becomes essential, yet often absent. To supporters, he represented traditional values, moral leadership, and spiritual certainty. His public identity centered on family devotion, marital fidelity, and personal discipline. He regularly preached about the sanctity of marriage, personal morality, and the importance of biblical alignment. His messaging emphasized unwavering conviction and straightforward moral clarity. Then everything unraveled with devastating speed. In 2006, revelations emerged that he had engaged in behavior directly violating the principles he had publicly advocated for years. The allegations involved substance misuse and inappropriate personal conduct. Immediately, he became the center of intense national controversy. Initially, he denied the accusations, suggesting misrepresentation or exaggeration. As additional information surfaced, his denials became increasingly untenable. The story dominated media coverage. Pressure from church leadership and the broader public intensified. Within days, he resigned from all leadership positions and withdrew from the church he had spent years constructing. His fall illustrated a fundamental reality: the higher the public pedestal, the more catastrophic the descent. His transformation from celebrated spiritual authority to symbol of religious corruption occurred with shocking rapidity. The scandal damaged not just his personal reputation, but inflicted broader harm on institutional evangelical credibility. Conclusion: 10 stories. 10 empires. 10 dramatic collapses. The pattern repeats relentlessly. Charisma attracts wealth, secrecy protects wrongdoing, and exposure brings destruction. Money, fame, hidden conduct, and performative repentance. These dynamics appear consistently across decades and organizations. Which of these scandals affected you most profoundly? Share your thoughts in the comments section. We value your perspective. If you found this examination illuminating, please like this video and subscribe to Unsolved Shadow to ensure you never miss our investigations into extraordinary revelations and hidden corruption. Turn on notifications so our latest expos arrive immediately in your feed. If you're hungry for additional unbelievable stories, concealed secrets, and dramatic institutional failures, click the recommended video now playing. Thank you for watching. We'll continue uncovering truth in the next episode.